It started with a moment that lasted barely a few seconds, but it was enough to set the entire sports world on fire. During the game, Shedeur Sanders walked toward the sideline, cool as ever, miming that now infamous watch gesture, a subtle flex that said everything without saying a word. Cameras zoomed in. Commentators froze mid-sentence. And in that instant, social media exploded. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. On TikTok, fans were remixing it with rap tracks. On X, people were arguing about whether Shedeur was confident or cocky. On ESPN, it turned into the headline of the night. What should have been a fun moment of swagger quickly became the next sports battleground, a line in the sand between old-school football minds and the new generation that refuses to apologize for their confidence. And standing right in the middle of that storm, Rex Ryan, never one to hold back an opinion. He saw the clip, and instead of laughing or shrugging it off, he went straight in. He called out Shedeur, questioning his attitude, his maturity, and even his leadership. To Rex, this wasn't a celebration, it was a sign of disrespect. And the way he said it hit a nerve with fans everywhere. Because this wasn't just about one play or one player. It was about an entire culture shift. You could almost feel it, the collision of two eras. On one side, the act like you've been there before crowd, the ones who believe football should be played with humility, grit, and silence. On the other, a new wave of athletes raised in the spotlight, unapologetically confident, media-savvy, and ready to own every second of attention they earn. That's where Pat McAfee entered the picture. The former player turned media powerhouse saw Rex's comments and couldn't stay silent. Live on his show, he unleashed what fans quickly called one of his most passionate rants, yet calling out Rex Ryan for being stuck in the past, for failing to see that Shedeur wasn't disrespecting the game, he was redefining it. McAfee's tone was fiery, but beneath it was something deeper, frustration at how the old guard still refuses to let go of outdated narratives. The clip of McAfee's reaction spread just as fast as Shedeur's original gesture. Suddenly, this wasn't a football debate, it was a full-on cultural moment. Fans started picking sides. Team Rex versus Team McAfee. Memes flooded timelines, podcasts debated for hours, and even players chimed in. What started as one gesture had turned into a conversation about authenticity, freedom, and what it means to express yourself in sports. And the wildest part? Nobody, not even Rex or McAfee, could have predicted how far it would go. Because once the internet picked it up, the story took a life of its own. What began as a simple celebration turned into a mirror for the entire sports world, reflecting the tension, the egos, and the evolving identity of the modern athlete. But this was just the spark. What came next was the fire. The moment Rex Ryan opened his mouth, you could feel the tension shift. Sitting on ESPN's Sunday NFL Countdown, he didn't hold back, not even for a second. Rex called out Shedeur Sanders with that trademark mix of confidence and condescension that only he can pull off. He questioned the kid's attitude, his focus, and even tossed in a few lines about respecting the game. To him, the miming and the watch gesture weren't confidence, they were arrogance. It wasn't the first time Rex had been this blunt. He's built his career on being unapologetically loud and brutally honest. But this time, his words hit differently. Maybe it was because Shedeur isn't just any player, he's the son of Deion Sanders, one of the most charismatic and influential figures in football. Maybe it was because Shedeur represents the new wave of athletes who embrace individuality, branding, and swagger. Whatever it was, Rex's criticism felt outdated, like he was trying to apply an old-school rulebook to a new era. Fans noticed that immediately. Within minutes, clips of Rex's rant hit social media. Some agreed, saying Shedeur needed to earn it before acting like a superstar. But a much louder wave of fans fired back, accusing Rex of hypocrisy and bias. So when old-school players celebrate, it's passion, one comment read. But when Shedeur does it, it's ego. The double standard was hard to ignore. And that's exactly when Pat McAfee decided enough was enough. On his show, McAfee didn't mince words. He called out Rex's comments as out of touch, saying, "The game's evolved, man. Let these kids be themselves." He reminded viewers that the league thrives on personality, and Shedeur was bringing exactly that. McAfee's passionate defense of Shedeur wasn't just about one player. It was a statement against a culture that tries to control expression in a sport built on emotion. Rex may have thrown the first spark, but McAfee turned it into an inferno. His rant didn't just challenge one opinion, it challenged an entire mindset. And as the clip went viral, the debate took on a life of its own. Because in that moment, it wasn't just Rex versus Shedeur. It was old school versus new school, and everyone was watching. What made this whole situation explode wasn't just one viral clip or one heated rant. It was the collision of two completely different worlds. On one side, you've got the old school football mindset, built on discipline, toughness, and the belief that swagger should stay in the locker room. On the other, you've got this new generation of athletes, confident, outspoken, and fully aware that football isn't just a sport anymore, it's entertainment, branding, and legacy all rolled into one. Shedeur Sanders sits right at the center of that shift. He's young, talented, and raised under Dan, a man who mastered the art of confidence before most of today's analysts even had social media accounts. To Shedeur, the watch flex wasn't arrogance, it was identity. It was how today's players communicate, not just to opponents, but to fans, brands, and the culture around them. But that's exactly where the disconnect begins. Guys like Rex Ryan grew up in an era where players weren't supposed to show too much personality. You played, you won, and you acted like it was routine. Celebrations were considered distractions. Confidence was often mistaken for ego. That mindset was carved into the culture for decades, until athletes like Shedeur, Cam Newton, and OBJ started flipping the script. The truth is, football today doesn't live only on the field, it lives online. Players are brands. Highlights, quotes, and celebrations can define a career just as much as stats. That's something the older generation struggles to accept. They see flash, the younger generation sees expression. They see showboating, the new wave sees storytelling. And that's the beauty of it, this isn't just a football debate, it's a cultural one. Shedeur's gesture wasn't meant to insult, it was meant to inspire. To show kids watching that confidence doesn't have to be hidden, that you can own who you are without apology. But while fans debated what was right or wrong, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't just a generational disagreement. It was a full-on identity clash between what football was and what it's becoming.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
And Pat McAfee, he knew exactly which side he was on. Because what he said next would pour gasoline on the fire. When Pat McAfee fired back at Rex Ryan, it wasn't just another sports debate, it was a full-blown cultural statement. The moment he leaned into that mic, you could tell he wasn't about to play nice. His tone was sharp, emotional, and unapologetically honest. "Rex," he said, "you're missing the point. These kids aren't disrespecting the game, they're energizing it." That line hit like a lightning bolt, because McAfee wasn't just defending Shedeur Sanders, he was defending an entire generation of players who grew up in a world that demands both skill and personality. He reminded everyone watching that football isn't just about X's and O anymore. It's about connection. It's about capturing moments that make people feel something. And Shedeur's viral watch gesture, that was exactly that, a moment that made the sport feel alive. McAfee went further, too. He called out the double standards that have existed in football for years. When an old-school quarterback pounds his chest or screams in someone's face, it's called passion, he said. But when a young black quarterback shows confidence, suddenly it's a problem. Come on, man. That comment echoed through every corner of social media. Fans clipped it, shared it, and replayed it like an anthem, because deep down, people knew he wasn't wrong. McAfee's rant tapped into something bigger than football. It was about perception, how media narratives are shaped, and who gets to be labeled a leader versus a showboat. And for Shedeur, who's constantly under the microscope because of his last name, it felt like someone was finally saying what needed to be said. Within hours, clips of McAfee's defense were trending across platforms. Fans flooded the comments calling him the voice of reason. Former players started weighing in, saying they wished more analysts would stand up for young athletes the same way. Even those who didn't necessarily agree with Shedeur's gesture admitted McAfee made a point. The game has evolved, and pretending it hasn't is just denial. But McAfee didn't stop at defending Shedeur. He flipped the mirror back on the media itself. "We say we want personality," he said, "but the second someone shows it, we tear them down." It was a bold challenge to the industry he's now part of, and it hit hard, because everyone knew he was right. The same shows that profit off viral highlights are the first to criticize them the next day. By the time McAfee finished his rant, the message was clear. This wasn't just about one kid's celebration. It was about how we treat individuality in a sport that thrives on emotion. And while Rex Ryan may have lit the match, McAfee turned it into a wildfire. But the craziest part, the fire wasn't just spreading through ESPN. It was about to take over the entire internet. If the moment between Rex Ryan and Pat McAfee lit the match, the fans were the ones who turned it into an inferno. Within hours, the internet became a war zone of opinions. Clips of Shedeur's miming gesture and McAfee's rant were everywhere, and depending on who you asked, Shedeur was either the face of modern confidence or everything wrong with today's athletes. X, formerly Twitter, was flooded with takes. One side praised Shedeur for bringing energy and swagger back into a sport that often takes itself too seriously. "Finally," one fan wrote, "a player who isn't afraid to be himself." Another posted, "If you don't like it, maybe you just miss the days when football was boring." But the other side came in just as loud. "He hasn't earned it yet," some argued. "This is why the new generation lacks respect." To them, Shedeur's gesture symbolized entitlement, the kind of attitude they believed would never have flown in the NFL they grew up watching. It wasn't just disagreement, it was a generational standoff happening in real time. Even other athletes jumped into the mix. Some defended Shedeur, saying confidence is what separates stars from spectators. Others sided with Rex, arguing that you show your greatness through play, not gestures. It became bigger than one clip. It became a reflection of how divided the sports world really is. Then came Deion Sanders' subtle but powerful move. He didn't post a rant or a direct response, just a short message on X. "They love you when you quiet. They hate you when you shine." That single line reignited the debate all over again. Fans saw it as a father's message of support, but also as a jab at the critics who couldn't handle his son's rising fame. Podcasts, YouTube shows, and even mainstream news outlets picked up the story. What started as a sports highlight had transformed into a national conversation about confidence, culture, and image. Because by now, it wasn't just about Shedeur or Rex Ryan. It was about what kind of player the audience wanted to see in the modern game. And as the arguments raged on, one thing became clear. This wasn't dying down anytime soon. If anything, it was only getting louder. When the noise started to fade and the reactions settled, one question lingered. What does this moment really mean for the future of the game? Because underneath all the takes, debates, and viral clips, something much deeper was happening. A cultural shift that goes far beyond Shedeur Sanders or Rex Ryan. This was about control. For decades, sports media has shaped the narrative, deciding who gets celebrated and who gets criticized. But now, players like Shedeur are taking that power back. Through social media, direct access to fans, and massive personal brands, athletes no longer need the traditional gatekeepers. They can tell their own stories in real time without waiting for approval. That's a massive shift, and it's one that old-school figures like Rex Ryan aren't entirely comfortable with. Shedeur represents a generation of athletes raised in the social era, where every play, every reaction, every gesture becomes part of the story. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. He knows the camera, always rolling. He knows every move will live online, and instead of hiding from that spotlight, he's learning to use it. That's what separates the new era of athletes. They're not just playing for the scoreboard anymore, they're playing for legacy, culture, and conversation. But here, where the tension lies, the line between confidence and controversy has never been thinner. One moment of expression can elevate a player to superstardom or make them a target overnight. Shedeur's gesture was a perfect example of that balance. What one generation saw as ego, another saw as evolution. It wasn't disrespect, it was disruption. And Pat McAfee, intentionally or not, became the loudest voice defending that disruption. He's part of this new wave of media figures who understand both sides. He played the game, but he also understands the internet. He knows that passion sells, authenticity connects, and personality matters. His defense of Shedeur wasn't just a rant, it was a statement on where sports media is heading. The truth is, Shedeur's rise mirrors the transformation of the entire sports landscape. The traditional analysts, the highlight shows, the old way of telling stories, they're all being replaced by a new kind of conversation. A player-driven one, where athletes don't just perform, they communicate. They set narratives, shape headlines, and own their image. So when people say this was just a celebration, they're missing the point. It was a symbol of how the next generation refuses to be silent, refuses to shrink, and refuses to fit into the mold that once defined greatness. Because in the end, this wasn't just about football. It was about evolution. And whether the old guard likes it or not, that evolution is already here. As the dust settles on the Shedeur-Sanders saga, one thing is undeniable. This moment marked more than just a press conference or a viral clip. It signaled a power shift in the world of sports, a shift from old-school authority to player-driven influence. The narrative has changed, and athletes are learning that silence is no longer safety. In today's era, visibility is power, and Shedeur proved he knows exactly how to wield it. For decades, critics, commentators, and analysts dictated the storyline. A player could be talented, hardworking, and professional, yet the media could twist the narrative with a single sentence, a single clip, or even an image. Rex Ryan's comments, the backlash over a backwards hat, and the manufactured drama surrounding Dylan Gabriel's starting role all exemplify the old system, one where perception often mattered more than reality. But Shedeur refused to play by those rules. By miming, by refusing to give the media the bite-sized controversies they craved, he flipped the game entirely. Suddenly, the storytellers became the story. Fans, too, have felt this shift. The reactions were divided, heated, and passionate, yet that very division proves the point. The audience now has a voice. Social media has transformed viewers into participants, amplifying every gesture, every statement, and every nuance. Shedeur's actions weren't just about defending himself. They were about demonstrating the modern athlete's agency in a world that thrives on spectacle. The players are no longer just pieces on a field. They are shapers of culture, symbols of a new era, and guardians of their own narrative. This moment also exposes the generational clash in sports culture. Veterans like Rex Ryan, steeped in traditional hierarchies and conventions, struggle to understand this new form of confidence. Meanwhile, younger athletes understand the digital ecosystem, the viral potential, and the importance of branding. They're not disrespectful, they're strategic. And in Shedeur's case, strategy became artistry. His miming was a statement of awareness, control, and ultimately resilience. But beyond strategy, there's an undeniable lesson in perseverance. Shedeur has endured criticism, skepticism, and manufactured drama since day one. Yet instead of succumbing to it, he's absorbing, analyzing, and preparing. Every slight, every overblown headline, every tweet doubting him becomes fuel. And when his time comes, whether as a backup or a starter, he won't just be ready. He'll be untouchable. The Shedeur-Sanders story reminds us of a broader truth. The balance of power in sports has shifted. Athletes now command their own narratives, control their own image, and determine how they're remembered. And in that shift lies the future of the game, one where talent, intelligence, and awareness matter as much as raw performance. So the question is whether Shedeur did the right thing by miming. The question is whether anyone can ignore the fact that the game has changed. And if history is any guide, those who adapt, embrace the spotlight, and use it wisely will define the next generation. Shedeur-Sanders isn't just playing football. He's showing the world who holds the power. And right now, that power is his.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.